This is Hannibal here from the Hannibal TV.com, and I am going to do my weekly Wrestling Observer review. It was a pretty big news week for wrestling this week, so I'll get right into it with the WWE news. There was a lot of talents that were not on the Raw and SmackDown shows recently. There's numerous reasons for that. Some of them have tested positive for COVID-19 and their names just have not been released publicly. At least one was held off for precautionary reasons, and some just didn't want to appear due to the COVID-19 outbreak, and they were allowed to make that choice. So WWE is not going to actually let out there who tested positive for COVID, because that's against health regulations, and they don't want anyone else coming out public about it. They want to stay within people's families. We do know there is a big COVID outbreak in the WWE, as well as Florida in general. As I had previously reported, the Warlord's scheduled shoot interview with me that was supposed to happen this week has been delayed because both his daughter and his father have COVID, and he lives in Florida. But I did manage to do a shoot interview with Tito Santana today, the El Matador himself. That was pretty good. It's going to be up on my patreon.com/the Hannibal TV channel sometime tomorrow. Maria Davis tipped me $20. Thank you very much, Maria. You're very kind. WWE has gone from not wanting anyone to wear a mask on their television show to now making them mandatory at tapings unless you're actually on TV in the ring. That policy went into effect June 27th, according to this report. John Brody, who is the executive vice president and global head of sales and marketing for WWE, answered some questions about why WWE is continuing to run shows during the pandemic. He stated, quote, "Our leader, Vince McMahon, who is the founder and chairman and CEO, believes that WWE has a social responsibility to put fans first and help fans get a little break from what was then the WWE's responsibility to try and take them away for a few hours from what's going on in the world." And basically, he went on to say that WWE does amazing things, and Charlotte and her colleagues, what they do in the ring, put smiles on people's faces and gives people a chance to feel something other than what they're watching on the news. So why are they continuing to run during the COVID-19 pandemic? According to this guy, it's just because they want to put smiles on people's faces. It has nothing to do with the money they get from TV deals or their responsibility to still have to pay people's salaries. It's all about the smiles on people's faces. As far as the WWE allegations against talent related to this speaking out movement, Triple H did a call with the NXT UK brand talent, which had the most allegations against it related to that. And he told performers that the company's protocol on any allegations of that type are to have zero tolerance on any charges, provided there was irrefutable evidence on the charges. Now, I don't know if there's been any actual formal charges. There's been allegations, but I don't know if in any of these cases, I don't think I've heard one formal criminal charge up to this point. It's just allegations. Alex Proctor tipped me $5. Thank you, Alex. Really appreciate that, along with Maria's $20 tip. Thank you so much again. So this call from Triple H came across as a warning to talent, according to Meltzer. The company's policy has in the past been that if there's police charges, talent will be suspended until there is either a conviction or exoneration. A conviction would lead to firing. But now the company can act on its own without police charges involved, if it has to, going on whatever the company considers serious evidence. So in other words, you don't have to actually be charged by the police with an offense to be suspended or fired now, which sucks because as we saw in Enzo's case, he was fired over false allegations that had no merit. WWE, Mark Dark Shadow tipped me $5. Says, have a safe weekend. Thank you, Mark Dark Shadow. Meltzer brings up here that WWE and Vince McMahon himself have had allegations against them over the years, which I'm well aware of, including in 1992, Terry Garvin, who was once a vice president in WWE, getting fired. He was head of the ring crew, and ring announcer Mel Phillips left the company over those same allegations, and those were related to Tom Cole's allegations of bizarre stuff going on with Garvin, Phillips, and the ring crew. And according to reports, that was settled. They quietly settled that with Tom Cole. Tim Horn tipped me $10 and says, thank you. Thank you, Tim. I use all of these tips towards other interviews, so I really appreciate it. I might be doing one with Raven soon, by the way, too. Mike Hamilton tipped me $20. He says, thanks for all the great reports. Keep up the good work. There's $20 for some protein shakes. Thank you. I am back in the gym now. I'm training hard, and I'm going to get into top shape again. I am in phenomenal cardio shape. I lost some mass over the lockdown. It's still locked down here in Ontario, but I'm traveling to Quebec for my workouts. Meltzer goes on to point out that Tom Cole, who worked on the ring crew when he was under 18, said he was fired after turning down some advances from these WWE employees. WWE ended up rehiring Tom Cole, and Meltzer even points out here that they settled with him. Pat Patterson was also head of talent relations at the time that all those allegations came out earlier. He briefly left the company and then came back. He still remains with the company to this day, although he never had his same position before. But obviously he still has power because, as I pointed out here, Patterson's close friend, Sylvain Grenier, remained with the company as an agent, despite guys like Lance Storm being released recently, and other producers like Gerald Briscoe, who are actually Briscoe was a talent scout, but a lot of more credible people than Sylvain Grenier were recently released. But because Grenier, who was also part of the concussions lawsuit, because of his friendship with Pat Patterson, I can only imagine is why they kept him on, because he'd been out of the business 8 or 9 years by the time they brought him back in. And he is the only wrestler who was involved in that concussions lawsuit, to my knowledge, that has been brought back with the WWE, which shows you the pull Patterson still has, despite all those allegations from the past that were swept under the rug, seemingly. So basically, people in the WWE office were not immune to allegations in the past. WWE has released Oliver Claffey, a.k.a. Jack Gallagher, Simon Musk, a.k.a. El Ligero, Travis Blight, a.k.a. Travis Banks, and referees Joe Allen and Chris Roberts related to speaking out allegations. They've also suspended Joe Coffey. And there's also allegations against Matt Riddle, Jordan Devlin, Barry Young, and Patrick Clark, but no action has been taken against them yet. John Wilburn tipped me $5.11. He says, good job. Love the interviews. Thank you, John. Clark is also known as Velveteen Dream. He's in a program with the Undisputed Era right now. He has not been on television or mentioned on television since the second set of charges came up against him. I guess they're more allegations than charges because, as far as I know, as I said, not in any of these cases, including Joey Ryan, has anyone actually been arrested, which is one thing that baffles me, because if you have that serious issue, why just shame someone on social media? Why not actually press charges so they're actually punished? Because all of this stuff people will forget. People have short memories. As noted last week, as I brought it up, Matt Riddle, his issues involved female wrestler Candy Cartwright, and WWE is still using Riddle. Jim Horworth tipped me $9.99. Thanks a lot, Jim. Really appreciate it. Thank you to you too. Monday's Raw featured Ric Flair and The Big Show, but had their third lowest viewership in modern wrestling history at 0.49 was the rating that they did. SmackDown last week did their regular 0.5 for their special tribute episode to The Undertaker. And it's funny because they advertised it as a tribute to The Undertaker, but they didn't actually use The Undertaker on the show. So they didn't have to pay The Undertaker, that means, in all likelihood. Maybe he got some royalties, but they didn't actually have to pay The Undertaker to appear on the show. They just did a tribute to The Undertaker. Didn't help ratings. They seem to consistently get 0.5s, despite Fox paying them hundreds of millions of dollars a year. And people always say, well, ratings don't matter. Ratings don't matter. These companies, their main revenue streams, both WWE and AEW, is like from their TV deals. So if they don't get ratings, eventually they could be canceled, or when they do renew their TV deals, they won't get as much money and they'll have to downsize. So yes, ratings are important. And this is funny. Dave Meltzer writes here, the biggest Wednesday night competition of the year took place with Fyter Fest versus Great American Bash. So yes, this was the biggest Wednesday night war of the year, according to Meltzer. And guess what the viewership was? NXT did a 0.22 rating and AEW did a 0.29 rating. So the biggest Wednesday night war of the year didn't even break a 0.3 rating. And although AEW won in the ratings, they did not win in viewership. NXT did 792,000 viewers, while AEW did 750,000. and 48,000 viewers. And I noticed Jericho was bragging on Twitter, well, viewership doesn't count. It's really ratings that count. So we won still, as far as I'm concerned, something along those lines. So it's just funny that Jericho is bragging about a 0.29 rating now. The WWE has purchased Evolve. I keep hearing what a great mind this Gabe Sapolsky was. That was, I guess, the booker for Evolve. But I actually looked up their YouTube channel today, and Evolve only has 35,000 subscribers. So they're not even comparable to the Hannibal TV. But no one ever gives me credit for anything. And I'm not look at my funding. Thanks everyone. Thanks Jim for the $9.99 tip, John for the $5.11 tip, Mike $20, Tim $10, Mark $5, Alex $5, Maria $20. I'll thank you again, but this is my funding. I'm not multimillionaire Billy Corgan. I'm not Anthem Entertainment. It's funny, and John just tipped me $2. It says Wrestling Observer is insanely biased towards AEW and won't admit it. I agree. It's actually pathetic how biased they are. It's actually sickening in some ways how biased they are to AEW. But my point of saying all those tips was this is my funding. Imagine if I actually had real funding. But I appreciate what I do get. As far as this made news this week, there was a lot of Twitter discussions as I guess Gail Kim was traumatized by the bra and panties matches she used to have to do in WWE. And Alexa Bliss said, quote, I respect the women who had to do the bra and panties matches because I could never do it, end quote. And Lance Storm even chimed in and said, the worst I ever saw was the over-the-top rope match where the guys fought and the women representatives of the guy on stage had to remove a piece of clothing when their guys was thrown out. Well, you guys can bitch and complain about that, but WWE is supposed to be entertaining. That was entertaining. That stuff got ratings. When they were doing bra and panties matches, ratings were a hell of a lot better. And you call yourselves storytellers, entertainers, performers. What the hell's wrong with that? That's entertainment. Someone throwing piss on somebody else in the ring or giant squids and garbage cans, that's not entertaining. That fucking sucks. At least bra and panty matches were entertaining. So it's just funny that was entertaining and you guys bash it now. And I'm sorry if it was so traumatic to Gail Kim. I do like her as a wrestler, but you can always say no. But your job as a performer is to perform. And you know what you're getting into with wrestling. It's a TNA business. That's the truth. It is a TNA business. It's about bodies for the most part. There's some exceptions like fat guys here and there. The Kevin Owens of the world, the Keith Lees of the world that are fat. But overall, the male wrestlers and the female wrestlers overall have good bodies. It's a television show. Sex sells. Bera7331 says, keep up the good work. Tips me $5. Thank you. In AEW news, I guess their TV deal is until the end of 2023. And AEW gets $43.75 million a year for their TV deal. Plus, they have a split on advertising revenue with TNT. So that goes to show you what I was just talking about. Where would these companies be without their TV deals? AEW, there's no fans in attendance now, so it's not like there's live gates. These companies, their bread and butter is their TV deals. I've already reported AEW suspended Sammy Guevara and Jimmy Havoc. Havoc, according to Meltzer, really hasn't gained that much public attention. Actually, the first time I even heard of Jimmy Havoc was over these allegations. Sammy Guevara has. I've already talked about this. Cody Rhodes has gone on record saying Guevara would return to the company a better wrestler and better person when he does. You know what? Maybe instead of suspending him, Cody, you should have just taken him over your knee like a baby and spanked him. That would have been funny. I love how Cody, he's the baby face of the company, but he comes off like a huge geek. Now, I don't support what Sammy Guevara said, using the term rape basically to say he wanted to have sex with Sasha Banks, I guess. Who Sasha Banks, if he actually tried to rape her, I think could beat him up. He's like 5 feet tall, 120 pounds or something. So I definitely think Sasha Banks could beat Sammy Guevara up if it came down to it. But if there was unions in wrestling, which there never will be, that wouldn't have flown. Because you can't suspend someone for something they said before your company was even formed. And as I said it, a troll dug this up. So AEW is now giving trolls power. You can go back in somebody's past, dig something up, a stupid remark from the past, and they'll get punished for it today. Whether they're a changed person today or not, people change. Sammy Guevara, I'm not a fan of his, but he's young now. Imagine when he said that, how young he was, and AEW didn't exist, so why punish him now? Sasha Banks already accepted his apology, and he already apologized to her, but do what you want. You want to be such a politically correct company. Their new motto, remember when they said they wanted to bring back old school wrestling? Now they want to promote tolerance and understanding in humankind. So they're not a wrestling company anymore. They're an activist company. In Ring of Honor news, Bully Ray's contract has expired and not been renewed. Ring of Honor hasn't run much this year. I think they've only ran a handful of times, and they don't have any official dates coming up, so it's understandable that they're not renewing contracts. In Impact Wrestling news, as I already reported, the Jeff Jarrett Global Force lawsuit against Impact Wrestling started to go to trial on June 29th. As far as I know, it's still in trial. That, as I've already stated, I won't get into it too much. Basically, for some reason, even though Global Force Wrestling was not over at all, Impact temporarily changed their name to Global Force Wrestling, brought in Global Force Wrestling titles, tried to temporarily rebrand themselves Global Force Wrestling for whatever reason, even though no one knew what the hell Global Force Wrestling was. And then it didn't work out, and they went back to being Impact. But in the meantime, they lost the Global Force Wrestling pilot footage or whatever that Jarrett had given them. How they could lose a master copy of footage only shows you how just plain stupid the idiots are that run Impact Wrestling. They did fire Michael Elgin from Impact Wrestling. And there's one thing I want to bring up about Elgin. I'm not a fan of his. He's very overrated. I won't get into all of the charges, but here's one thing that was apparently against him. Now, I keep saying charges because Meltzer is saying charges. They're allegations. Charges, as far as I'm concerned, is when you're formally charged with something by the police. But I guess one of the things people had a problem with Michael Elgin doing was he called a fan fat. So I guess you're not allowed to call a fan fat anymore. Wasn't Michael Elgin a heel? Maybe that's why none of the companies on TV right now will ever touch me, because I'm not afraid of getting real heat. But this is pathetic. You can't even call a fan fat. But regarding the allegation that he called somebody fat, Michael Elgin denies it. He says that it wasn't true, and he grew up as an obese kid and used to cry himself to sleep because girls wouldn't pay attention to him, and it scared him greatly. And he'd never say that about someone. He said the allegation that he called somebody fat hurt him more than the other allegations against him, which were related to speaking out. Give me a break. What the hell is wrong with wrestling these days where you can't call somebody fat? It's supposed to be politically incorrect. They're taking everything that used to be entertaining about wrestling and just throwing it in the garbage. Mike Hamilton tipped me another $5. He says Global Force is a joke. He booked Abyss on his show, and they demanded to receive a fee above Abyss's fee. So yes, I also heard that. Global Force Wrestling was requesting fees if you were booking their talent, which obviously doesn't help talent get booked, because it's hard enough to make money on an indie show. Then you got to pay fees above the talent fee. Mathis Bofetti tipped me $2 and says, could I tell a pint-sized Mark story? Maybe at the end. But I still have other news to get into. So as far as Impact, last piece of news, I'll say former referee Chris Levin claimed that he was released from Impact after speaking to an investigator regarding a sexual harassment claim made by a former women's wrestler against a member of Impact management. I guess this was a female performer, may not have been a wrestler, could have been an announcer. And this referee spoke to an investigator and says he was fired for speaking to the investigator about this claim against Impact management. Pro Wrestling Noah returns to having shows in front of spectators July 18th and 19th at Karukin Hall. The Cauliflower Alley Club might not be holding its convention at all this year due to the lockdown. More information will be available July the 15th. They have also put Bob Cook in charge of Cauliflower Alley Club social media. He's doing a great job so far. The other guy that they had in charge of social media was horrible, flat out horrible. I think he may, I won't even say it, but there might be something wrong with that guy. Did a terrible job. As people know, I was recording Cauliflower Alley footage. The old guy didn't share it once. You would think that the guy in charge of Cauliflower Alley Club social media would actually share videos about the Cauliflower Alley Club. Bob Cook has already shared tons of videos about the Cauliflower Alley Club. Doesn't seem to have a personal agenda like the other guy did. So good move there. Switching head of social media. Apparently, because the COVID-19 thing is going nuts in Mexico, the idea of running shows in front of full arenas is a long way away. I already reported this. Killer Tim Brooks, who was a heel that had like a biker / street thug type gimmick, wrestled all over the place, passed away on June the 30th at 72 years old. He'd been battling cancer for years, And in 2019, he stopped his chemotherapy treatments. He was best known for his work in the Texas wrestling scene. A UK wrestling legend named Jim Beeks was going to trial related to the death of his former girlfriend, Donna Crowley, in 2017, but the case was thrown out due to him having dementia. He was accused of killing the girl while they were on vacation in the Canary Islands, or, well, I guess they were living there. But because he was ruled unfit to stand trial, he's been moved to a psychiatric facility. He was 80 at the time of the alleged killing, and he was accused of punching the girl, who was 47, several times in the face and body, smashed a cup over his head over an argument at their holiday resort apartment. That case reminds Meltzer of the Jimmy Snuka case, where he was unable to stand trial in relation to the death of his ex-girlfriend, which I've covered on this channel. I actually have a whole compilation video, if you search it up, Wrestlers Speak, on Jimmy Snuka murder allegations. So I guess the girlfriend of this British guy, Crowley, actually got on the phone after she was beat up, but she died the next day in the hospital. So that's an unfortunate situation. I really cannot stand female abuse by men, physical abuse in particular. It's always really bothered me. In UFC news, UFC June 27th from Las Vegas did a 0.43 rating for the main card that featured Dustin Poirier defeating Dan Hooker by decision. Poirier made $350,000 for the win. Hooker got $160,000 for the loss. Ray Say What tipped me $2.99. Thank you, Ray Say What. There was another fight on the card. Brendan Allen beating Kyle Dacus via unanimous decision. That was supposed to be a very good fight. Allen only got $28,000 for winning. Dacus only got $12,000 for the loss, which goes to show you how little UFC fighters actually make. Because remember, they have to pay their trainers and cornermen, etc., out of that pay. And they can only fight like 3 times maximum a year. So not great pay as an MMA fighter. There was also a fight between Mike Perry defeating Mickey Gall, who everyone remembers. Gall easily defeated CM Punk. Perry got $180,000 for winning. Gall got $50,000 for losing. There was some controversy before the fight because Perry wanted his girlfriend in his corner rather than a regular full corner. But it obviously worked for him because he defeated Gall. And whatever motivates you, if it's a hot girl in your corner that you want to impress by beating the shit out of someone, maybe that works for you. So a lot of people criticize him for that. It obviously worked. Bill tipped me $5. Thank you, Bill. Thank you very much for all the tips. UFC will run every Saturday night in August in Las Vegas from the Apex. They're also going to be running every Tuesday night at the Apex for the Contender Series. Henry Cejudo, who recently was known for leaking the backstage footage of Chris Jericho and Mike Tyson after that AEW debacle. Well, I guess it wasn't really leaked footage because Jericho posted a picture with him with his arm around Tyson as well. So it's not like they were trying to kayfabe, but Henry Cejudo has started training a Team Vision dojo in Orlando. Dana White has said he's considering McGregor as retired. He's taking McGregor at his word. Khabib's father passed away. Sorry to hear about that. Forbes in Russia is saying that Khabib is the most successful Russian celebrity right now under the age of 40. He earned $16.5 million last year, has 20 million Instagram followers. He has sponsorship deals with Reebok, Toyota, and Gorilla Energy. And he earns $78,000 for his speaking appearances. Justin Gaethje was named to the Northern Colorado Athletics Hall of Fame. Mike Tyson did an interview where he was talking about MMA fighters' pay being low and said that John Jones, who is arguably the greatest MMA fighter of all time, would have to face someone like Tyson in a boxing match to truly get a massive paycheck, similar to Conor McGregor having a box a few years ago to get a big payday. Jones is saying right now he's not looking to fight anytime soon. I've heard him say he was going to wait out his UFC contract because he's in a dispute right now over not getting what he feels he's worth for basically taking shots to the head. You are getting brain damage when you're fighting unless you're lucky and not taking any shots, which Jones obviously doesn't take as many as a lot of guys because he's a phenomenal fighter. But you should get paid well for getting your brains beat in my opinion. Brandon Alexander tipped me $10. Thank you very much, Brandon. As far as Tyson Fury's boxing career, they were working on having Fury versus Anthony Joshua in Saudi Arabia. But to do that, they would have had to pay off Deontay Wilder because he had a rematch clause. Now it looks like Wilder versus Fury is actually going to happen in a third fight before Wilder versus Joshua. It could potentially happen December 19th in Las Vegas at an outdoor stadium. If it were to happen in Las Vegas, it would be set up for 20,000 capacity. But who knows if there'll be a COVID-19 vaccine out by then. Combate America is going to be doing tapings August 28th, September 11th, and September 25th. They have not ran since the lockdown. We've already gone almost 40 minutes, so I'm not going to get into too many of your questions. For Mathis, it tipped me $2. Once a story about a little Mark. There's lots of little Marks in wrestling, tons of them. One of the biggest little Marks out there would be that guy that cried to get his WWE contract reinstated. What the hell was his name? I don't even remember his name already. But what the hell was his name? Rockstar Spud. I forget his WWE name. But there's way too many small wrestlers. Someone asked me the other day, do I have something personally against small wrestlers? No. I'm an MMA fan too. I like to watch heavyweight fights and girls fights. Not interested in the small fighters. However, I will watch it from time to time. I just say there's way, way too many small wrestlers in wrestling now. Wrestlers should be the type of people that when they walk into a room, you're like, holy shit. And we don't have very many of them these days. Wrestlers are actually smaller than your average person on average these days. Michael Allen Rubin says so many people talking about the COVID-19 tests in WWE being substandard these days. There are, yes. They weren't doing COVID-19 tests. They were just doing temperature checks before this latest outbreak where reportedly over 30 WWE personnel caught it. So now they are doing actual COVID tests. Stephen Curtis Tip me $10. Says Marty Jannetty is the favorite interview I've done. I highly suggest people look that one up. Meekin-headed Freak says make sure Raven is drunk for his interview. He gives the best interviews when he's drunk. Well, since I'm stuck doing Skype interviews right now, I can't really offer him alcohol. But from the privacy of their own homes, sometimes being intoxicated works out to a better interview. Other times it doesn't. ACOATL says he loves my videos. Thank you. Anthony Shabbat, have I watched No Holds Barred? Yes. I think I will have to watch it again, though, because many people have asked me to do a review of No Holds Barred. I did like No Holds Barred, by the way. Rio Cali, will I be competing in real wrestling again? The problem with me competing in amateur wrestling is the town that I'm living in does not have a university wrestling team. So I have to actually travel 2 hours to Montreal to train with high enough quality wrestlers to give me a workout. So you don't get paid for amateur wrestling. You make nothing. So you actually have to pay to enter the tournaments. So at this point, I'm actually making money from YouTube. So I'll stick with what I'm making money with. Would I ever fight MMA? If the right offer came to me, yes. Anthony is asking me, do I see Triple H taking over WWE? If he did, it probably wouldn't do that well because you can look at NXT ratings, which are shit. That tells you something about Triple H's booking ideas. Mike is asking me, is Gangrel returning to Great North Wrestling? I don't know. Rio says, I love my fellow Hannibals. Meekin-headed Freak, WWE World's Worth Ethics. Chris McKessel says, what's the worst bump I took? I've had people screw up stuff on me and injure me, but the worst one I took, the most painful one I took, is I once saw Jack Evans take a bump from the ring apron to the concrete floor, and I was having a WWE scouted match with Jim Ross and Gerald Briscoe watching after I made my return to wrestling after being off with Hep C. So I decided, well, I'll show them I can take good bumps. So in that match, I took a bump. I think it was a drop kick from the apron, flat to the concrete floor. And that really, really, really hurt. I was seeing a chiropractor for a couple weeks after that to get it fixed. Of course, I continued the match. But the truth is it worked because made me stand out. Jim Ross and Gerald Briscoe recommended me for an NXT tryout after that, which WWE canceled. And if you want to know more details on that, look up the video I posted this week, Hannibal on his WWE experiences. Bill just tipped me $12. Thanks a lot, Bill. I really appreciate it. Victor Murphy says innocent until proven guilty in the court of law. Right now on social media, it's like, I'm glad I work for myself because companies right now in wrestling, it seems any allegation and you're gone. Whereas, for instance, my job is still closed. My real job is still closed. Another reason why I appreciate all your tips. It hasn't reopened because I work at a gym and they're still closed here for the lockdown, but it is for the city. I work for the city, so it'll be one of the last gyms reopening. But let's say something happened with me there. What would happen if an allegation was made? There'd be an investigation. Okay, then what would happen is there would be hearings, internal hearings, and if you didn't like what the internal hearings are, you could go to the union, and then the union would have another hearing. to see if the internal hearing decision was right or wrong. Then if you don't like the union decision, you could then go to the courts. But in WWE's world, someone throws an accusation. Well, actually, WWE hasn't been as bad as some of the other companies, just getting rid of people over social media accusations. But if Impact literally fired Michael Elgin, I know there was other charges, but for calling somebody fat, which I believe he was a heel, because I'm pretty sure he was, because the last thing I saw of Michael Elgin was something he was doing with Shamrock, and I believe Shamrock's a face. But if you're a heel and you're calling someone fat, you should not be fired. I'm sorry. That's just sad. They don't want heels to be heels anymore. Eddie V says regarding Gail Kim being traumatized over having to do a bra and panties match. Eddie V says she's an idiot. That's just another quote-unquote victim. Everyone likes to make themselves out to be a victim. Wolfpack 4, Lift 3. Do I think WWE purchasing Evolved makes it harder for upcoming wrestlers? No, because it seemed like they were going out of business anyways. They basically just bought their tape library. They had canceled all their future events. And from what I understood, before this announcement, there was even issues with ticket buyers getting refunds for events. Master Mike 1 says, any chance of doing an interview with Dan Crawford, a.k.a. Phil LaFon? Maybe if I'm back in Alberta. Chris Compton says, Turner dumped WCW for going under a 3 rating. True. The WCW at its lowest, I think the lowest rating it ever had was like a 2.3 rating or something. It was still in the 2s, and those were considered bad ratings. Meekin Headed Freak didn't like the bra or panty matches. The Divas are a piss break for me. Eddie V says, poor Shayna, but she was in trouble as soon as she got called up. No way Vince would ever push her. I don't know much about Shayna other than she's out of the wrestling business now. Colonel Quayle has some comments about Patterson. I won't say. Michael Allen Rubin, Jake Hager suspension is at work. I was listening to Les Thatcher on the Wrestling Observer Radio today, and he is not pro AEW, by the way. He's probably one of the few in Wrestling Observer Radio that's not a obsessive AEW fanboy. But he was mentioning, why is Jake Hager's wife in AEW now? It seems like all the wrestlers, their wives and their moms are now involved in AEW storylines. It's like how to make wrestlers uncool. As much as I like The Undertaker, even seeing that Last Ride documentary, the interactions with The Undertaker and Michelle McCool made me think he was less cool because it seemed like she was the one in control of their relationship. Only a couple more because we're getting really late here. Liam Sharon says Harley Race is the perfect example. Well, he is a great wrestler, but I'm not sure what you're talking about, the perfect example of what. I'll answer one more question. Brandon Allen tipped me $10. Thank you, Brandon Allen. Really appreciate it. And there's a ton of questions on there. I won't get into them all because we're already 50 minutes in. You can listen to these Wrestling Observer reviews, audio version, by subscribing to the Great North Wrestling Podcast on iTunes. The link is in the description. And it's also at thehannibaltv.com. Ahmed L says, big shout-outs from Philly. My favorite city in the United States. Giving me $20. Why? Because in Philadelphia, at least they know I am the greatest. I'll give them that. I am really over in Philadelphia. At least I'll give them that. as much as I may not have been that much enjoying my own interactions in that city. We are on Twitter and Instagram at the Hannibal TV. So I wish all of you guys a good night. Thank you very much for all the tips.